Welcome to another edition of our podcast. Scott, myself, Andrew Zimmel. We've been doing this, 3 weeks now, Scott?
Something like that. This is episode 3, I believe.
All right. 3 weeks in, and we're feeling pretty good about ourselves. Your Troy Trojans lost. My Bobcats lost. So we get to start this podcast off with a fun loss. South Alabama losing to UAB, a program that has just now come back. Or I guess they've been back for a couple years now, but they're still relatively new, the resurgence of UAB. South Alabama losing this game, to me, is a big deal. What about you?
All right, if it's a big deal, I think that it's only a big deal because it kind of puts South Alabama in its place a little bit. It kind of we thought, the South Alabama team, they might be different this year. They might kind of have it all together finally. And then they just get clobbered by UAB from start to finish. And it kind of it brings everything back to normal on that front, I think a lot of people aren't quite as concerned about South Alabama or hyped up about South Alabama anymore.
Well, outside of Mobile, I would be kind of I guess if you don't live inside of Mobile, Alabama, if you don't care about South Alabama, then this is just another loss. But if you're in that city, I think that this loss matters. I know you tweeted about it and I liked it. How we need to have more of these different conferences, same state type of rivalries. I want to see more of the Alabama teams play each other that aren't just Auburn and Alabama. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. We'd all love to see it. We'd love to see a Troy UAB back, and it is coming back. And of course, it would have loved to have seen it this year, so we get that 3-game series going, see who the king Alabama is. We'll never see Troy Auburn or Troy Alabama. That will never happen. Auburn has been very vocal, not really vocal, but they're very adamant about not playing Troy, to the point where they did schedule South Alabama in the near future. And it is known that Troy Athletic Director Brent Jones has tried to schedule just one game with Auburn, and Auburn won't even answer the phone.
Why do you think that is?
It's an hour down the road, and Troy is known for taking down these Power 5 teams with pretty much regularity since joining the FBS in 2001. So they don't want to risk that at all. And with South Alabama, you've got not nearly as much to worry about, really.
All right. Well, South Alabama going forward, this loss to UAB, is it not a deal, big deal, or no deal? How do you feel about South Alabama going forward after this game?
I think that it is a deal. It is important. Just because of what happened at quarterback, you go with Lovertich, and it doesn't go well. I think I've been on the Desmond Trotter train. Desmond Trotter has been extremely impressive. He was great last year down the stretch, and he was great to open this season. I think you got to stick with him. I think you bring in the other guy. I think you bring in Chance in spot situations and let him play. But for the most part, I think it's Desmond Trotter.
All right, let's talk about your Troy Trojans, who went and played number 18 BYU. BYU kind of put the smackdown on them, 48-7. Let's talk one good thing coming out of this game, Scott. Was there one good thing that you saw out of Troy playing a top 25 team?
I think that's your one good thing. They played a top 25 team.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, there it is. That's where it ends.
What went wrong? Because the running game didn't really exist. BYU was able to tear them up passing the ball. You really can't use this as a litmus test. This is, BYU is a legit program. They aren't a pushover. Are you concerned? Is there any way to be concerned about this, or is this just how this game was supposed to play out?
Well, it's very clear that, including Troy, the 3 teams that Troy fans have seen play are on 3 completely different levels. Troy, Middle Tennessee, and BYU. Completely different levels. And what went wrong on Saturday is, early in the game, both teams are feeling each other out. It's like a boxing match, just like a football game, often goes. And both defenses were controlling the line of scrimmage pretty much. And Troy has been known to play behind the line of scrimmage for the most part with Chip Lindsey, and even quite a bit under Neil Brown. And they never got away from that. And that was really the big downfall. On first down, Troy got stuck behind the line of scrimmage and was stuck on these passing downs And I think that you have to go back to last week against Middle Tennessee, ironically enough, in that beatdown to see where Troy really messed up. I think that Troy got exposed a little bit there. So we talked about it last week. Middle Tennessee probably had about 10 quarterback hurries, 4 sacks in that loss that they had, and I think BYU kind of took advantage. I heard the announcers talk about how BYU rarely blitzes out of their 3-man front. Well, they blitzed on Saturday. They blitzed Troy. They got after Gunnar Watson. I think they saw that last week, and they could do that. And that changed everything. Troy wasn't able to do anything on first down. Was averaging like 2 yards a play on first down. And that was your big difference. And the same thing on the other side. BYU was averaging like 12 yards a play on first down. It was insane. And that's really where everything fell apart. Troy's going to have to do something different on first down to put Gunnar Watson in a good position. That was the big issue.
Well, to me, it also goes into the fact, Troy got outscored 24 points to 0. They didn't score in the second half of this game. I think that's part of it too, Scott, is that you got to get your offense going after halftime. And I didn't love Troy last week after halftime. I thought that they did beat Middle Tennessee. They did play well, but I don't know. I need to see more of a spark in the second half from Troy.
Absolutely. I mean, my big thing is they've got to start trying to push the ball downfield, but not after already putting themselves in a bad spot. There were 2 drives, 2 really good drives. There was a scoring drive, and then the drive where they did score again, but it got called back for a hold. And both drives, they were pushing the football downfield on first down, and it was working out just fine. And you had a big 55-yard pass to Trey Eater, and then you scored a little bit later with the ground game because you've already found success through the air. And that's with Troy is kind of I think it's going to be kind of the opposite of the traditional game plan. I think Troy's going to have to open up their own ground game with its pass game because the offensive line is not there. It's not nearly as good this year as it has been in the past. So you're going to have to help out your O-line by creating something downfield.
So the only undefeated team left in the Sun Belt Conference, Louisiana Lafayette, they host Georgia Southern. They barely get away with that one, 20-18. Lafayette, I still think that they're the best team in the Sun Belt. I still think that they are really, I think, the team to beat. I don't love, and we can get into this if you want, the AP polls. I talked about it this morning on Twitter, how we are now putting teams who have said that they're going to come back. They said that they are going to play a season, have not played a single game yet, are in the top 10, the top 5. And a team like Louisiana, which has beaten everybody in front of them, is still not in the top 15. I have a huge problem with that. But let's talk about this game before we get into that. Louisiana beats Georgia Southern. What do you see out of Southern to keep this game so close?
I think you saw a more full-strength Georgia Southern. You saw Wesley Kennedy back. You saw Raynard Ellis on the defensive side come back. This was a team that was very different from what we saw against Campbell. This was not the 33 players are out team that we saw against Campbell. This was the full Georgia Southern. I moved them way up in my power rankings, which will come out this week, because they definitely looked like what they were supposed to look like. I don't think that this was some kind of fluke performance from Georgia Southern. I think this is the Georgia Southern that we should expect when they're fully healthy. This was a good team. You saw J.D. King and you saw Wesley Kennedy and you saw Shai Wertz all do their thing out of the backfield on offense and get what they want. And then the defense looked a lot better this week too.
Lafayette almost gets got. I have just said I really like this team. What's the panic level at this point for Louisiana?
For Louisiana, I don't think it's high at all. I think that you walk away with knowing that Louisiana, knowing that your team is resilient, knowing that your team is facing these situations and is coming away with the win, knowing that last week you watched them go down 14 points on the road and then come back and win in overtime. And then this week you lose the lead with like a minute and a half left and you come back and still win. So I think that you're happy. I think that, yes, you would like to win some games without having a heart attack at some point. But I think, and at the end of the day, a win is a win. This is the Sun Belt. You're not going to have cakewalks every single week, regardless of how talented you are. Every team is going to punch up to your level.
So in a week and a half, they play on Wednesday against Appalachian State, not this coming Wednesday, but the following Wednesday, in a preview, in my opinion, of the Sun Belt Conference Championship game. But they also play Coastal, UAB, Texas State, Arkansas State, South Alabama, Clark, and ULM. Outside of that App State team, that is I think, going to be a punching match. It's going to be a tough contest. Who else on this schedule could knock off Lafayette?
I'm super, super anxious to see Coastal Carolina back in action. I really want to see what they're all about. They took down Kansas, of course, and then dismantled Campbell. I want to see what they can do against Sun Belt competition because I'm super high on them. I think they've got a very complete team. And, depending on how they look in their next game, I think that would be the team that I'd be worried about for anybody in the Sun Belt who is trying to make their way to the division title game. With Louisiana and App State having to play Coastal, I would go so far as to say that the road to the Sun Belt Championship goes through Coastal Carolina. You got to get past those guys.
Let's talk about Louisiana now moving up in the AP polls. You cover the Sun Belt Conference at this point. You're becoming one of the more prominent faces, one of the more well-known names in the Sun Belt, Scott. Put your name on it. Lafayette, do they deserve to be in the top 15?
The top 15, they deserve to be pretty dang close. I mean, if not, right on the edge. And then, of course, today they drop all the way out. It's ridiculous, in my opinion. You're 3-0. You've 1-0 against the Big 12. Oklahoma, they're 1-1. Their only win is against Missouri State. They've lost to Kansas State, a team that Arkansas State already beat. And they're in at number 15 and 16? It's really ridiculous. I mean, you've got to get rid of the conference label, in my opinion. Everybody's still stuck on the same 2005 Sun Belt Conference that, the Sun Belt champion comes out at 7-6 because they can only win conference games. This is a completely different era. I mean, you've already seen the Sun Belt just dismantle the Big 12 a couple weeks ago. The entire country saw it. It was the story of the week. You've got to get rid of the label. Louisiana is a top 25 team, definitely a top 20.
So here's my problem. Do you rename the conference? I know that we both don't love the new conference logo that they rolled out this year. Do you rename the conference? Like, how do you do this? Because my fear, Scott, is that a team like App State, a team like Louisiana looks around and says, look, we can't get the net recognition. We're not getting the program that we deserve, like a Conference USA might be getting or a Mountain West Conference might be getting. Let's hop ship. And then all of a sudden, one of the premier programs in the conference is leaving. That would be my biggest fear as a Sun Belt fan.
Yeah, I don't really see that happening. At least, the only conference that could possibly take away a Sun Belt team, in my opinion, is the American Conference. Nobody is jumping ship to Conference USA. I can tell you that right now. Nobody is sacrificing that money to go to Conference USA. The American is really the only jump that I can see. But even that, you look at the American Conference, everybody there is in a major city and a major market, and that's what they're looking for. And they're looking for good athletics all the way around, and that's hard to find in the Sun Belt, honestly. You don't really have any major markets in the Sun Belt. Lafayette's one of your biggest ones, 100,000 people in that city, and they still can't get a sellout game in their stadium. Pre-COVID sellout game. They got to sell out a sellout this week at Lafayette, but it doesn't count. But yeah, that's your biggest market is Lafayette. So I don't think, personally, I'm not worried about it. I don't think you rename the conference. If anything, you make it bigger, you expand it, and you get yourself more bowl tie-ins. That's been number one, in my opinion, on most Sun Belt fans' wish list. More bowl tie-ins, because we're tired of seeing 6-win Sun Belt teams stay home, and it's been annoying. You watch Conference USA, a 14-team league with a very big seller, a big group of teams right there at the bottom that are just all complete crap, and they've got 7 bowl tie-ins for whatever reason. That's annoying. The Sun Belt needs to be in those bowl games and at that national stage.
Well, especially when you consider ESPN owns how many bowls, and now the Sun Belt's main provider is ESPN Plus. I want to get into it when we talk about Texas State because I have a story about that, but let's talk about Campbell and App State. So this would be, when you talk about teams to expand, this would be the team to expand to. Even though they are 0-3 at this point, I thought that they put up a pretty good fight against App State. It was 52-21. I thought the score was a little bit deceiving. I thought App State put up an incredible fight. They won the game by a wide margin. But the opponent they were facing was not a pushover, in my opinion. What did you get out of this game?
Not at all. Campbell's free trial in the Sun Belt came to an end. 0-3, you're right. But they did play well. They had a great first half. App State finally came alive in the second half. Campbell looked good. I like Campbell in the Sun Belt. I think they should join. I think they're a little young, but we took Georgia State out of nothing. They didn't even exist. South Alabama, same thing. So I mean, it can be done. App State, I'm still kind of iffy about App State, honestly. Watching them, I was watching the offensive line. That's been where my problems have been with App State this year. And they were a little inconsistent. It seemed like one play they got a great push, they created a hole. Then the next play they got nothing. I mean, every gap was plugged up. With App State, I think you're going to look for some consistency and adjustments. And adjustments is something I think they did a very good job of in this game. I did not watch the second half. I was too busy watching ULM get curb stomped. And but I saw the score, and I knew right then App State finally turned it around. And hopefully they can keep that going through the year.
Let me push back a little bit. Harrington had 211 yards and 4 TDs. Noel had 131 yards in the TD. The running game worked against Campbell. Now, is it going to work against some of the other good teams in the Sun Belt? That's to be determined. But the running game I thought was fine. And our favorite quarterback, the guy that we talk about every single week, Zach Thomas, 12 of 18, 131 yards. I know you didn't watch the second half. I'll admit I didn't watch a lot of this game either. But Zach did not look nearly as bad as he's looked the last 2 weeks. I think he's finally settling down a little bit. I don't want to he never lost the title of the best Sun Belt Conference quarterback. I've been begging Brady McBride to play better, and Tyler Vitt might have had it for a week, but I think he's still the best quarterback in the conference. I think he's finally settling down a little bit more.
Absolutely. It's not a great year for Sun Belt quarterbacks, in my opinion. But yeah, he's definitely still number one. We'll probably come out with like an updated rankings, I think, out on Sun Belt pages kind of midway through the season and see where he stands. But yeah, I think Zach Thomas is still number one, but I feel like he is settling into a game managing role. And I think at this point in his career, that's something he needs to break out of and start pushing the ball downfield. He still has the receivers to do so. He's got the offensive line. But yeah, Zach Thomas, he did not make mistakes on Saturday, and that's the big thing. That is a step forward for Zach Thomas. It seemed like he's kind of had to reset this year, and like you said, settle back down. And I think that the Campbell game was step one for him.
Now, okay, he's a 4-year starter or 3-year starter. He's a senior. I think NFL talent. I really do. I think that he has that type of late round undrafted talent that to get in the league at least, or at least get a look. My problem is, you're right, the game managing part of it is that I need the quarterback to do a little bit more. And it really comes down to what App State's trying to do this year. If they think their running game is good enough and they just need a quarterback not to turn the ball over, okay, I'll buy that. But if I'm Zach, I'm kind of like, hey, man, let me air this ball out. Let me get some stats. Let me get some highlights. Because right now, and maybe it's just my Texas State bias showing, the Sun Belt Conference hasn't had a ton of highlights, even though they were one of the only conferences to play. Like Arkansas State has had their highlights. I expect a little bit more out of App State when it comes to, highlight reel type plays. What do you think?
Absolutely. I'm honestly getting tired of Texas State hogging on the SportsCenter top 10 plays. Get really annoying. Georgia Southern had one yesterday, and as you said, Jonathan Adams went crazy a few weeks ago. But it's just been Texas State, all Texas State. It's really bothersome. It needs to stop.
Oh, okay. Let's talk UTEP curb stomping ULM. UTEP, a 3-win program. I did not see that coming this year, and ULM getting dropped to 0-3 winless. Another thing I did not see happening. What do you think out of ULM?
Well, first of all, UTEP is a 3-win program, but all 3 wins are against FCS competition.
Well, except this one.
All 3 wins are against FCS competition. All 3. All of them. ULM is a special kind of bad right now. It's not good. And I think that they're in a really tight spot. It is like the definition of being stuck between a rock and a hard place. You've got Matt Viator, whose days at any other program would be numbered. His career arc matches any other coach's career arc who is about to be fired. And I don't know if that's going to happen to ULM because there's the whole money thing. You have no money. Are you going to pay that buyout? And then how are you going to pay the new coach? They're trapped in this situation, and the only place they can go right now is further down.
You can't bottom out, though. I mean, okay, Monroe, would you rank them the worst program in Louisiana? Like, where do they rank between FBS programs in the state?
Between FBS programs, I mean, they're at the bottom.
Okay.
Right? I mean, there's nobody else that can be worse than ULM. I mean, even if you add in the FCS programs, you can probably get a little bit lower. I mean, between Nichols and Southeastern, I mean, there's no telling. None of those games are easy wins for ULM.
That's tough. And, like I said, UTEP, a 3-win program, only in the COVID era would they not be one of the worst programs in the country. But with 3 wins, I can't put them in there. All right, 2 games got postponed, Georgia State and Charlotte, Tulsa and Arkansas State. We want to see Arkansas State play. I'm really excited for Arkansas State. They haven't played in, 2 weeks now? They had a very long vacation. I have a lot of Arkansas State fans that I like. I enjoy their content. Georgia State not playing, that sucks. I want to see those 2 teams play. But I want to talk about the postponements before we do our Bobcat segment because I wanted to leave that for the back. These postponed games, what is that going to do to the Sun Belt? Are we going to catch Georgia State and Arkansas State slipping up after these long breaks, or what do we expect here?
I don't think you see them slipping up at all. I think that it gives them an opportunity to rest a little bit, to be fully healthy, as long as there aren't any positive tests. And as we learned today, Georgia State didn't even have any positive tests. It was just an whole accidental thing. I think it's a good thing for Georgia State. But I think the biggest thing for the Sun Belt and really for any conference and every single team is you're not going to play out your full schedule. I mean, when you saw games getting postponed week 1 to the very end of the season, that's when you find out right there you're not playing your full schedule. It's not happening. I mean, you're gonna be very lucky if you make it all the way through your schedule without a postponement, because there just aren't enough dates. As we've already seen, there are several Sun Belt teams that don't even have a bye week the rest of the way because the schedule's loaded up. So there's nowhere to put these games at. At the very least, with the postseason so up in the air as to whether or not, what's going to happen with bowl games. Obviously, bowl eligibility isn't really a thing this year. You might have teams that, don't get picked for a bowl game, reschedule a game that they had postponed early in the year. I think that's something that could happen. But for the Sun Belt right now, that I think you just try and play as many games as you can.
We should have talked about that because it was a new thing this week. I should have started the podcast. That's on me, Scott. We are now all bowl eligible. We could have the Sun Belt Conference playing the ACC in a couple of these bowl games, hopefully. I want to see an App State North Carolina game at some point. I want to see those 2 teams face off again, and this would be the opportunity. I really like it. I like that they open it up. I like that they are letting everybody in. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think that we should circle the wagons next week and come up with Sun Belt versus Power 5 games that we absolutely must see in bowl season. I think App State against several SEC and ACC teams will be fun. I would love to see App State play Wake Forest, since Wake Forest could have absolutely played App State this year and they kind of chickened out of that. They backed out of that deal. That would be very fun to force Wake Forest to play App State anyway. With Louisiana, I would love to see them play LSU somehow. That would be fantastic, or really any other SEC West team. There's a lot of matchups that I want to see, Texas State against Baylor, against Texas Tech, against anybody.
I don't want to see Texas Tech. No, I'm good. Let's talk Texas State. They played an ACC team. They lost to Boston College. I did not cry myself to sleep last night. A lot of fans did. A lot of fans and San Marcos cried in their beers as the Bobcats fell at the last second. I'm going to let you start because I have my thoughts on this, and you have just now joined the Texas State bandwagon, Scott. So you can lead us off on this one.
Yeah, I was hurt. I was really disappointed. You know, I was enjoying the game. Texas State looked great, and they're all white. It looked really nice on TV, making the big plays that they do. You know, playing great defense. They were playing Texas State Sun Belt football, and I was enjoying it. And oh my God, did it fall apart at the very end? Just massively collapsed, all on itself, and it was just it was the worst thing to watch. It's third down, and why do you hit the quarterback after he throws the ball? Why? That's the most boneheaded thing I've ever seen. After DK Metcalf just fumbled against the Cowboys, that's the new most boneheaded thing I've ever seen.
I'll start right here. So I don't want to blame my guy, Brady McBride. I know that you might have opinions on Vitt. I'll tell you from watching Vitt play, he's a good kid. I would prefer to have Brady back there. I stand by my take. I'd rather have a quarterback take a 15-yard sack trying to make something happen than take a 6-yard sack just staring down the field. You know what I mean? I want to see my quarterback try to make something happen, try to make a play. He took a couple bad sacks last night. That one really hurt the Bobcats. 2 touchdowns, 229 yards. The Bobcats were in this the entire time. I knew that they were not going to win this game. I thought they were going to win the entire time until the field goal kicker for Boston College made the kick. I thought the Bobcats were going to win all the way up until that point because I don't know. Call me naive, whatever, but I thought they were going to pull it out. This is the part of the podcast where I tell you that everybody I know is distraught about this, Scott. Like all of my friends, my family members were texting me saying like, I cannot believe this collapse that they've just had. Bobcats were up 21-7 at one point. You thought, hey, the Bobcats are going to pull this one off, and it just all fell apart. And this is the life of a Bobcat fan, man. 1-3, you could be 4-0. You really could. Like, you could draw a world where you were a 4-0 football team, and you were in that same conversation with Louisiana as the best team in the Sun Belt Conference. And instead, you're 1-3, and maybe you win out, but I doubt it. This hurts. So I don't know. Where do we go from here, Scott? Like, what do you see for Texas State that you're like, I like that, do more of that?
I think that it's a positive that you can ask, where do we go from here? And there is actually room underneath you to go. Like, you can actually go down. And that's new for Texas State. That's very new. I think you think of that and you look at that and you go, okay, we're in a place that we haven't been in a long time. We just got to get over that hump. And that's a loaded question. That's not we just got to get over the hump. It'll happen eventually. A lot of teams get to that point and never get over the hump. You look at ULM. You look at an older Texas State team. You got to get over that hump. And I think Spavital is the guy to do it. But you just got to keep pushing. You got to learn how to finish games, and you got to be more disciplined. That was a really rough way to finish that game.
I don't know where they go, man. I really don't. I think we have a bye week this coming week, or something. I don't even. Yeah, we have a bye week before we play at Troy. So it's going to be an interesting podcast after that one, Scott. I'll tell you that much. All right, are we missing anything? You want to hit anything else, or are we good?
Are we going to talk about next week?
If you want to, we can talk about next week. Next week on the schedule, we have a handful of games that I'm pretty excited for. Let's go down the list. Eastern Carolina versus Georgia State. Arkansas State versus Coastal Carolina, probably the game of the week to me. Georgia Southern versus ULM, the poo-poo platter. Troy versus South Alabama. All right. Arkansas State versus Coastal, clearly the game of the week, right?
Absolutely.
It's an early game, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time kickoff, which is not something I'm in love with. Scott, I'm going to ask you a question here because you've watched the Sun Belt, you care about the Sun Belt. Are you sick and tired of games that are not on ESPN Plus at this point? Because this is driving me crazy as a Bobcat fan. Having games on the ACC network. Oh, well, actually, it's on Fox Sports 7. Well, actually, it's on Nesson. I watched the game against Boston College on Nesson, Scott. I'm done. I need all these games to be on ESPN Plus from here on out.
Yeah, I think the Texas State game was definitely an anomaly because that was weird. I was trying to find the game too, and then it hit me like there's like 3 different channels on Hulu that it's on right now. I'm like, okay, this is weird. I'm sitting here watching it on ESPN3 on my phone. I don't have to do that. It's on TV. It was really weird. But honestly, I'm the opposite of you. I'm annoyed when a game is on ESPN Plus. I'm like, where's the damn respect? The Sun Belt needs to be on ESPN1. every week.
No, I like the ESPN Plus games. I don't know. Texas State has a really good crew. Shout out to them. They do a really good job. ESPN Plus, I wasn't in love with it when we started the contract, but I think every school has gotten a little bit better at doing the games, and now they are very watchable. I think all the games are very watchable. They're very fun. But I'll say this. Nesson broadcasters, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're a Boston College fan listening to this podcast, those guys stink. They were awful, Scott. Those were the worst announcers I've ever heard in my entire life. The one-handed grab by the Bobcats. Now, I know I'm wearing the Bobcat shirt, whatever. The one-handed grab by the Bobcats by the name slips my mind right now. Down the sideline. Right? Yeah. Down the sideline. The announcer, instead of being like, "This is one of the best catches I've seen in my entire life," was like, "Oh, he pushed off." What type of play? What are you doing? Just call the game, okay? Just call the game. It was very frustrating for me during this game. What is the game of the week for you? Are we still looking at Arkansas State and Coastal, or what's the plan?
Unbiased, non-objectively, it is Arkansas State and Coastal. Getting to watch two very exciting teams go up against each other on the teal field, no less, at 11 a.m. balling at the beach. I like it. I like the early kickoff, in my opinion. I think this is a great way to start the game or start the day, especially with Troy and South Alabama coming at the end of the day. So I don't know. I enjoy this week.
All right. That's going to do it for Scott and I. Tune in next week when we break down the game of the week on Arkansas State and Coastal, and I tell you why the teal field is the best colored field in football. Scott, I'll talk to you next week.
I'm looking forward to it.